When you encounter a situation in life that seems too difficult to handle, when the challenges feel insurmountable, and when the road ahead is dark and uncertain, there's a powerful and transformative principle that can bring peace to your heart and clarity to your mind. Leave it in God's hands. Trust in the process, believe that there is a higher plan, and watch what happens when you relinquish control and surrender it all to Him. We live in a world where control is prized, where we are taught from an early age to take charge of our destiny, to make our own way, and to ensure we are always in the driver's seat. But life has a way of reminding us that we are not always in control. There are moments that arise when our own power and wisdom fail us. It's at that point we must come to the realization that sometimes the best thing we can do is to stop trying to force outcomes and trust that a higher power is working behind the scenes. This is where faith enters the picture, where we decide to believe that God has a plan for us, even when we can't see it, and we leave the outcome in His hands. When you leave it in God's hands, you're not abandoning the problem or the responsibility. You're choosing to stop carrying the weight of it alone. You're deciding to place it in the hands of the one who knows what the future holds, who has the wisdom to navigate the unknown and the power to turn any situation around. It's the conscious decision to trust that He will work things out in His own time and in His own way. There is a profound peace that comes from this surrender. When you release the need to control, you are acknowledging that there is a limit to what you can do, but there is no limit to what God can do. You are setting yourself free from the burden of trying to figure everything out on your own, and in doing so, you create the space for divine intervention. There are no circumstances too great, no problems too difficult, and no obstacles too high for the one who created the heavens and the earth. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when you're in the midst of struggle. Life can throw challenges at you, health issues, relationship problems, financial struggles, career setbacks, or personal doubt. It can feel as though the weight of the world is bearing down on your shoulders. And when that happens, it's tempting to get bogged down by the pressure, to fall into despair, or to take matters into your own hands in a way that only creates more chaos. But when you leave it in God's hands, you stop trying to solve everything yourself and start trusting that He has already made a way, even when you can't see it. Leaving it in God's hands isn't a passive act. It's not about doing nothing. It's about taking action in alignment with faith. It's about continuing to move forward, even when you can't see the whole path ahead of you, knowing that each step is guided by divine wisdom. It's about doing your part, but with the understanding that there is someone much greater than you at work behind the scenes, making all things come together for your good. When you trust in God's timing, you learn the importance of patience. We live in a fast-paced world where we want things to happen now, but God operates on a different timetable. His plan is often much bigger and far more intricate than we can comprehend. What seems delayed may just be preparation for something greater. What seems like a setback may be a setup for a bigger blessing. Consider the moments when your plans didn't work out the way you expected. Perhaps you lost a job, had to leave a relationship, or things didn't go according to your carefully laid out plans. At first, these events can seem devastating, but when you look back, you realize that they were simply pieces of a puzzle being moved into place. The loss of one opportunity may have been the gateway to a greater one. When you leave it in God's hands, you allow Him to rearrange the pieces of your life in a way that will ultimately serve your highest good. Another powerful element of leaving it in God's hands is the sense of peace that fills your heart. When you are in control, the burden of the unknown weighs heavily on you. You are constantly trying to plan and predict, and that can lead to anxiety and stress. But when you trust in God's plan, you are no longer tethered to the need to figure it all out. The pressure begins to lift, and you experience a deep sense of peace that only comes from trusting in the one who holds all things together. Faith doesn't always mean you get immediate answers, and it doesn't mean that everything will unfold according to your desires. Sometimes the outcome may not look exactly as you envisioned it, but it will always be exactly what you need. That's the beauty of trusting in God. His plan is always better than yours. He knows you better than you know yourself, and he has a way of orchestrating events in your life that align perfectly with your purpose. Leaving it in God's hands also allows you to let go of resentment and bitterness. It's easy to become frustrated when life doesn't go the way you want it to. You may feel as though you've been wronged or that others have taken advantage of you. But when you leave it in God's hands, you let go of the need for revenge or the desire to right every wrong. You trust that he will bring justice and that you don't have to fight every battle. You can release the burden of anger and let God take care of the rest. There are also moments when the weight of the world seems unbearable. In those times, it's important to remember that God has promised to never leave us nor forsake us. He is always with us, even in the darkest of times. When you leave it in his hands, you acknowledge that you don't have to walk through life alone. He is with you every step of the way, guiding, strengthening, and providing the wisdom you need to navigate whatever challenges arise. One of the most difficult aspects of leaving it in God's hands is accepting that we don't have control over everything. As humans, we like to know what's coming next. We like to feel like we can manage every situation. But life is full of surprises, and often the greatest growth comes from stepping into the unknown with faith and trust that God is guiding us. The act of surrendering control is an act of humility. An acknowledgement that we are not the ultimate authority and that there is a divine plan unfolding that is far greater than anything we could orchestrate on our own. So when life gets tough, when the road seems too hard to travel, and when you're faced with a challenge that seems impossible to overcome, remember this: leave it in God's hands. Trust that he is at work in your life even when you can't see it. Believe that he has a plan for you and that in his time, all things will come together for your good. Watch what happens when you stop trying to control every outcome and instead trust that he is the one who ultimately holds the future. What you thought was a setback may turn into a setup for something extraordinary. What seems like a struggle may become the very thing that propels you forward into the next chapter of your life. When you leave it in God's hands, you open the door to miracles, blessings, and possibilities beyond your wildest imagination. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. All you need to do is trust, surrender, and watch what happens when God takes control. Letting go and leaving your challenges in God's hands releases the burden of trying to control every outcome. Trusting in a higher power allows for inner peace, knowing that everything will unfold according to a greater plan. Life's obstacles and setbacks are often part of a bigger picture. Trusting in God's timing and plan, despite not always seeing immediate results, allows you to grow, learn, and experience transformation that leads to your ultimate good. Leaving it in God's hands does not mean giving up on effort or action. Instead, it's about aligning your actions with faith, trusting that God is working behind the scenes, and knowing that he has the wisdom and power to turn any situation around. When we talk about surrendering control, it may seem counterintuitive to many of us. We live in a world that promotes self-reliance, where we are encouraged to take charge of our own destinies, to manage every aspect of our lives, and to ensure that everything goes according to plan. We are often taught that the more control we have, the better our lives will be. But the truth is, the more we try to control every little detail, the more we rob ourselves of peace. In the quest for control, we often find ourselves overwhelmed by the pressure of it all. There's a constant anxiety that lingers, a fear of the unknown, and a restlessness that can't be quenched. It's as though we are always running against the clock, trying to keep things together, trying to ensure that everything goes according to our own timeline. But in this struggle for control, we can find ourselves spiraling into stress, frustration, and exhaustion. The weight of trying to manage everything becomes too heavy to carry, and peace eludes us. This is where the concept of surrendering control comes in. When we talk about surrendering control, We're not suggesting that we give up on our responsibilities or stop making decisions. We're not advocating for passivity or abandonment of our personal goals. Rather, we're acknowledging that there are things in life that are beyond our grasp, things that we cannot influence or change no matter how hard we try. And when we recognize these limits, we give ourselves permission to release the pressure we place on ourselves to control outcomes that are out of our hands. At the core of surrendering control is the idea of letting go. It's about recognizing that we don't have the power to dictate every circumstance and that life will unfold in ways we can't always predict. It's about accepting the uncertainty and trusting that, in the end, things will work out the way they are meant to. This act of letting go is not a form of defeat or resignation. Rather, it's a form of liberation. When we release the need to control everything, we free ourselves from the mental and emotional exhaustion of constantly fighting against life's natural flow. There is a profound peace that comes with surrender. Imagine for a moment the weight of constantly trying to control everything. The effort it takes to hold on to every decision, every outcome, every detail of your life. It's a heavy burden to carry. But when you surrender control, that weight is lifted. You no longer feel the constant strain of managing every little aspect of your existence. Instead, you embrace a sense of calm, knowing that some things are simply beyond your control. The peace that comes from surrendering control is not a fleeting sense of relief, but a deep, lasting calm that permeates your life. It's the kind of peace that allows you to face challenges without being overwhelmed by fear or anxiety. It's the kind of peace that helps you weather storms with grace, knowing that no matter how difficult things may seem, you are not alone in the process. By surrendering control, you invite a sense of trust into your heart. A trust that things will unfold as they are meant to, even if you can't see the bigger picture. Surrendering control also means embracing the unknown. In our desire for certainty, we often try to predict and plan every aspect of our lives. We want to know exactly what will happen next, and we want to be prepared for every possible outcome. But life is unpredictable, and no matter how hard we try to plan, there will always be things beyond our control. This uncertainty can be terrifying for many of us. It's difficult to step into the unknown, to trust that things will be okay without knowing exactly how they will unfold. But it's precisely in these moments of uncertainty that surrendering control can bring the greatest peace. When we let go of the need to know every detail, we open ourselves up to the possibility of something greater. The unknown is not something to fear, but something to embrace, because it holds the potential for growth, transformation, and unexpected blessing. By surrendering control, we allow ourselves the freedom to navigate life's uncertainties with faith and trust. We stop trying to manipulate every outcome and instead choose to flow with life as it comes, knowing that each moment holds its own wisdom and beauty. There is also a deep sense of peace that comes when we let go of the need for perfection. We live in a world that often pressures us to be perfect, to have everything figured out, to always be in control, and to appear as though we have it all together. The idea of perfection can create tremendous stress because no one is perfect and no life is without its flaws and imperfections. When we try to maintain control over every detail, we often fall into the trap of striving for an ideal that doesn't exist. This perfectionist mentality can lead to burnout and dissatisfaction as we constantly fall short of the unattainable standards we set for ourselves. But when we surrender control, we release the need to be perfect.
We accept that mistakes will happen, setbacks will occur, and life will sometimes take us down unexpected paths. This acceptance doesn't mean we stop striving for excellence or stop caring about the quality of our work. Rather, it means we allow ourselves the grace to be human, to make mistakes, to learn, and to grow. It's in this space of imperfection that true peace can be found. When we let go of the burden of perfection, we make room for the beauty of the journey, and we can find peace in the process rather than only in the outcome. Another way that surrendering control brings peace is by allowing us to release the need to manage others. In relationships, we often try to control the actions, thoughts, and behaviors of others, whether consciously or unconsciously. We want our loved ones to behave a certain way, to make decisions that align with our desires and to meet our expectations, but this desire to control others can create tension, conflict, and resentment. When we try to control people, we undermine their autonomy and we place unrealistic expectations on them. This can create feelings of frustration and disappointment, both for us and for the people we are trying to control. Surrendering control in relationships means accepting others as they are without trying to change them. It means letting go of the need to manipulate outcomes and instead allowing people to make their own choices. When we stop trying to control others, we free ourselves from the stress of constantly trying to get them to meet our expectations. This doesn't mean we stop caring about the people in our lives or stop supporting them. Instead, it means we learn to trust them, to allow them to grow and evolve in their own way without the pressure of our control. And in doing so, we create more harmonious, peaceful relationships. Surrendering control is also a key component of embracing faith. When we let go of the need to control every situation, we are, in essence, placing our trust in something greater than ourselves. This act of faith can bring an immense sense of peace because it allows us to release the constant worry about what's going to happen next. Faith in a higher power provides a sense of security and comfort, knowing that we are being guided and supported even when we can't see the way forward. When we surrender control, we align ourselves with a higher purpose, trusting that everything is unfolding as it should. We stop trying to force things to happen according to our will and instead accept that there is a divine plan that is greater than our understanding. This trust provides a foundation of peace, knowing that no matter what comes our way, we are not alone and that everything will ultimately work out for our good. Surrendering control is not about passivity or inaction. It's not about being complacent or giving up on our dream. Instead, it's about releasing the obsessive need to control every aspect of life and trusting that we can still be active participants in our journey without carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. It's about finding balance between taking action and letting go, between striving for what we desire and trusting that the universe or God will provide. When we surrender control, we free ourselves from the constant pressure and anxiety that comes with trying to manage everything. We invite peace into our lives, knowing that we don't have to have everything figured out, that we can trust in the process, and that we can live with faith and confidence, even in the midst of uncertainty. And in this surrender, we find the peace that we've been searching for all along. Faith in God's timing and plan is one of the most profound and transformative aspects of the spiritual journey. It is the recognition that there is a higher power, an all-knowing, all-wise force that is orchestrating the events of our lives. While we often find ourselves fixated on the immediate, the now, and the circumstances we face in the present moment, there is a greater narrative being written that transcends our understanding. Trusting in God's timing means accepting that we cannot always see the full picture of our lives in the way He does, but we can trust that in the end, everything will unfold according to His perfect plan. One of the hardest things for humans to grasp is the concept of divine timing. We live in a world that is built around schedules, deadlines, and expectations. From a young age, we are taught that we need to work toward a goal, meet certain benchmarks, and adhere to a timeline. We are encouraged to make things happen, to be proactive, and to control the course of our lives. But there is a stark contrast between human understanding of time and divine understanding. God is not bound by time as we are. While we operate on clocks and calendars, God operates on His own divine schedule, one that is perfect, deliberate, and beyond our comprehension. And this is where faith comes into play, choosing to believe that God's timing is always right, even when it feels like things are not happening according to our plan. It's easy to be frustrated when things aren't going the way we want them to. We live in a world where immediate gratification is often prioritized, and we are constantly told to go after what we want right now. But what happens when what we want is not happening on our timetable? What happens when things don't go the way we expected or when our prayers seem unanswered? This is when faith in God's timing becomes essential. We have to trust that His timing is not delayed, it's perfect. Just because things aren't happening the way we want them to right now doesn't mean they aren't happening at the exact moment they are meant to. God's timing is not based on human urgency or impatience. He knows what we need, when we need it, and the exact moment we are ready for it. We often believe that our plans are the best ones, that we have it all figured out, and that we know what's best for us. But the truth is, God sees the whole picture, our future, our past, and everything in between, and He knows what is best for us, even if we don't understand it at the moment. This is where we are called to have faith, to trust that He knows the perfect time to bless us with what we need, and that His plan is far greater than anything we could imagine. Faith in God's timing also means understanding that delay is not denial. Many times, we may feel as though our prayers are going unanswered or that God has forgotten us. We might see others around us receiving the things we desire, and it can feel like we are being left behind. But the reality is that God's plan for us is unique. The timing for our blessings may be different from someone else's, and that doesn't mean that we are any less worthy of His love or provision. It simply means that God's perfect timing has not yet arrived for us to receive what He has in store. This requires a shift in perspective, a move away from comparison and frustration toward trust and patience. When we truly believe in God's timing, we can rest in the assurance that everything will come together when the time is right. This faith is also deeply connected to surrender. Surrendering to God's timing means letting go of our own agendas and trusting that His plan will unfold as it should. This surrender is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of trust. It's a decision to believe that we don't need to push, strive, or force things to happen. It's about acknowledging that there is a divine purpose behind every season of our lives, even the ones that seem confusing or painful. We might not understand why certain things happen when they do, but surrendering to God's plan means embracing the reality that there is a purpose behind the waiting, the delays, and the detours. These moments are often a part of a bigger picture that we cannot see from where we stand, but our faith allows us to believe that God is at work, weaving a tapestry of our lives that will one day make perfect sense. Furthermore, faith in God's timing and plan also requires patience. Patience is not always easy to cultivate, especially in a world that values instant results and quick fixes. But patience is an essential part of trusting in God's plan. When we try to rush the process or force things to happen on our own, we can often find ourselves in situations that are not aligned with God's will for our lives. Patience, in this context, is not about passivity. It's about actively waiting on God's perfect timing with confidence that He will not leave us empty-handed. This patience doesn't mean sitting idly by and doing nothing. Rather, it's about continuing to move forward with faith, taking the steps we are called to take, and trusting that God is working behind the scenes to bring everything together. One of the most powerful aspects of having faith in God's timing is the peace that it brings. When we stop trying to control the outcome and instead trust that God's timing is perfect, we experience a deep sense of peace. It's a peace that comes from knowing that we don't have to worry about the future, that we don't have to fix everything ourselves, and that we don't have to rush the process. Trusting in God's timing means releasing anxiety about what's coming next and resting in the assurance that He is in control. This peace doesn't mean that life will always be easy or that things will go smoothly, but it means that we can face challenges with the confidence that God has a purpose behind everything and that His timing is always right. Moreover, God's plan for us is always for our good. Even in moments of hardship or struggle, we can trust that God is working everything out for our benefit. This doesn't mean that everything will be easy or that we will always get what we want, but it means that God's plan is for our ultimate growth, development, and fulfillment. We may go through seasons of difficulty, but those seasons are often times of preparation. They are moments where God is shaping us, refining us, and getting us ready for something greater. In the process, we learn to rely on Him more fully, to grow in patience, and to trust in His sovereignty. There are countless examples throughout Scripture and in the lives of those around us of how God's timing is always perfect. From the waiting of the Israelites in the wilderness to the story of Abraham and Sarah's long wait for the promised son, the Bible is filled with stories of individuals who had to wait on God's perfect timing. In each of these stories, the individuals were called to trust and have faith that God's plan would be fulfilled, even when they couldn't see it. Abraham, for example, was promised by God that he would become the father of many nations. However, he had to wait many years before that promise was fulfilled, and in the waiting, he and his wife Sarah struggled with doubt and impatience. But God's timing was perfect, and in the end, they received the fulfillment of the promise with the birth of their son, Isaac. This story serves as a reminder that waiting on God's timing is not wasted time. It is a time of preparation, growth, and trust. Similarly, in our own lives, we may not understand why certain things are happening when they are, or why certain prayers seem unanswered. But when we choose to have faith in God's timing, we open ourselves up to His perfect plan, even when it feels like we are waiting longer than we'd like. We trust that He is preparing us for something greater, and that His timing is always worth the wait. In those moments of waiting, we are invited to deepen our faith, to grow in patience, and to trust that everything will unfold in the way it is meant to. Ultimately, faith in God's timing and plan is about trusting in His perfect wisdom, His boundless love, and His infinite understanding of our lives. It's about believing that He is working everything together for our good, even when we don't understand why things are happening the way they are. It's about knowing that we are not alone in the process and that His perfect plan will be revealed to us at just the right moment. Trusting in God's timing requires surrender, patience, and faith, and when we do, we find that we can walk through life with peace, confidence, and hope, knowing that everything is unfolding just as it should. Empowerment through surrender is a concept that many might initially find paradoxical. How can we feel empowered by giving up control? How can letting go, trusting, and allowing life to unfold as it will offer us a sense of strength and power? The answer lies in understanding that true empowerment does not always come from our ability to control, manipulate, or manage every aspect of our lives, but rather from our ability to trust the process, to release the weight of perfectionism, and to embrace the unknown with faith. This surrender is not a sign of weakness or submission. It is, in fact, the opposite, an act of courage, wisdom, and inner strength that can lead to greater freedom, peace, and fulfillment. In a world where we are taught that power is synonymous with control, letting go often feels like an act of vulnerability. We are encouraged to take charge, make decisions, and keep pushing forward to achieve our goals. But the truth is, this constant striving to control every aspect of our lives can lead to burnout, frustration, and anxiety. We become so focused on maintaining control that we forget to enjoy the journey, to trust the unfolding of life, and to recognize the power that comes from surrendering to the flow of what is meant to be. Empowerment through surrender begins with the understanding that we cannot control everything. There are factors beyond our influence, other people, situations, timing, the natural course of life. And when we try to manipulate or change these elements, we create unnecessary tension and stress. The more we try to control everything, the more we exhaust ourselves trying to fix, change, and manage things that are not in our hands. When we let go of this need for control, we begin to free ourselves from the constant mental and emotional struggle. And in this freedom, we find true empowerment. Letting go does not mean giving up, nor does it mean that we stop taking action. Empowerment through surrender is not about being passive or inactive. It is about choosing where to focus our energy. It is about recognizing that there are areas in our lives where we must take charge and areas where we must simply trust, accept, and move forward with faith. We are still required to make decisions, to act with purpose, and to pursue our goals. However, the key lies in knowing when to release the need for control and when to trust that the universe, life, or a higher power is guiding us toward what we need at the right time. When we surrender, we are not passive victims of life's circumstances, but active participants in a much larger process. By surrendering control, we take our focus off of what we cannot change and instead we direct our energy toward what we can influence. This shift in focus gives us a sense of empowerment because we stop fighting against the current of life and begin to flow with it. We understand that while we may not always be able to control the outcomes, we have full control over how we respond to life's challenges. This is where true empowerment lies, not in the ability to control everything, but in the ability to choose our responses, to maintain our inner peace, and to trust that everything is unfolding as it should. Surrendering also allows us to release the heavy burden of perfectionism In our quest to control everything, we often set impossible standards for ourselves, believing that we must always be on top of everything, that we must perform flawlessly, and that we must meet every expectation. The pressure to be perfect can be overwhelming, and when we inevitably fall short, we may experience feelings of inadequacy, guilt, or frustration. Empowerment through surrender means accepting that perfection is an illusion, and that striving for perfection can prevent us from experiencing the beauty of the journey. When we let go of the need to be perfect, we open ourselves up to growth, learning, and self-compassion. We recognize that mistakes are part of life and that we are always evolving. This acceptance of imperfection gives us the freedom to step forward without fear of failure, knowing that each misstep is simply an opportunity for growth. There is also a great sense of peace that comes with surrender. We live in a world that values constant doing, achieving, and succeeding. We are often told that we must constantly push, hustle, and compete in order to achieve our goals. However, this constant striving can lead to stress, anxiety, and exhaustion. When we surrender, we allow ourselves to be present in the moment. We no longer feel the need to constantly push forward or worry about what is coming next. Instead, we cultivate a sense of trust that everything will work out in due time, and we allow ourselves to relax into the flow of life. This peace that comes from surrender is a form of empowerment because it allows us to experience life with clarity, without the weight of unnecessary worries and anxiety. We become more grounded, more centered, and more in tune with the natural rhythm of life. Empowerment through surrender also means letting go of the fear of failure. Many of us are driven by the fear that if we don't control every aspect of our lives, we will fail or fall short of our goals. However, failure is not something to be feared, it is something to be embraced. Failure is not a reflection of our worth, but an essential part of the process of growth. When we surrender our need for perfection and control, we begin to view failure differently. We see it not as a roadblock, but as a stepping stone on the path to success. We recognize that in surrendering, we are freeing ourselves from the shackles of fear and opening ourselves up to the opportunities that failure can provide. Each failure becomes a lesson, each setback a chance to grow, and in this process, we find empowerment. Letting go also enables us to embrace the present moment. So often we are caught up in the past or anxious about the future, and in doing so, we miss out on the beauty and richness of the present moment. The constant need for control often stems from our fear of the future or our regret over the past. However, when we surrender control, we can release our attachment to both the past and the future and fully embrace the now. We recognize that the present moment is all we truly have, and that by being fully present, we open ourselves to the joys and possibilities that life has to offer. This shift in perspective is incredibly empowering because it allows us to live fully, without the constant weight of worry or regret. Furthermore, empowerment through surrender enables us to build trust, not only in ourselves, but also in others and in the universe. When we surrender control, we acknowledge that we don't have to do everything on our own. We trust that we are supported by a greater force, whether that is our faith, the people around us, or the universe itself. This trust brings a deep sense of empowerment because we no longer feel alone in our journey. We know that we are part of something larger than ourselves, and that this greater power is always working with us, not against us. And when we trust in the process, we feel a deep sense of connection and support. And this sense of trust empowers us to take bold steps, knowing that we are never truly alone. Surrender also allows us to cultivate a deeper sense of gratitude. When we are focused on control, we often focus on what is lacking, what we don't have, and what we need to achieve in order to feel fulfilled. However, surrender invites us to shift our focus to what we already have. By letting go of the need to constantly strive for more, we begin to appreciate the abundance that already exists in our lives. Gratitude becomes a natural byproduct of surrender, and in this gratitude, we find empowerment. We recognize that we are already enough, that we already have everything we need to live a fulfilling and meaningful life. This realization is incredibly freeing and gives us the strength to move forward with confidence, knowing that we are already empowered by the richness of the present moment. Empowerment through surrender is not about giving up or being passive in life. It is about choosing where to invest our energy and trust. It is about releasing the need to control every outcome and trusting that the journey will unfold in its own time. It is about accepting that life is full of uncertainties and yet finding strength in the knowledge that we are supported, guided, and loved every step of the way. Surrender brings peace, freedom, and clarity, and in doing so, it allows us to step into our own power, knowing that we are part of a much larger story that is unfolding in perfect harmony. In this place of surrender, we find the ultimate empowerment, the freedom to be fully ourselves, to trust the process, and to live in alignment with our deepest truth.